So welcome to the Sports Africa Live Roundtable. Today we're going to be talking about how women, girls, and sexual minorities are navigating African sporting spaces. My name is Inime Japon. I am on the faculty at the University of Cincinnati as an assistant professor in women's gender and sexuality studies. And my research is primarily focused on West Africa, specifically Ghana. I'm interested in how folks kind of engage in different kinds of cultural politics to affect social change. And currently, I'm working on a project about women's football, what Americans call soccer. I'm interested in how notions of the nation are articulated through the women's sport. And I'm really excited for the panel today. Now, this panel is being organized by the Gender, Sexuality, and Sports section of Sports Africa. And so towards the end of our time together, I will turn it over to my colleague, Marie Eng, to tell us more about the working group. But for now, I just really want to jump into the conversation we have today. We have some great panelists. And so if you saw the program, I'm just going to go in the order of the panelists. And what I'll do is I'll briefly introduce each panelist with just their name and their role and ask them to tell us a little bit more about how they got involved in helping women and girls and to the extent that they do other kind of gender and sexual minorities navigate sports in their country. And so what I'll do is I'll say your name and then I'll turn it over to you to tell us a little bit more about yourself and your organization. So our first speaker is Dorcas Amakobe, who is the Executive Director of Moving the Goalposts in Kenya. Dorcas, thank you so much for joining us, and over to you.
Thank you, Anima. As you've said, I am Dorcas Amakobe, the Executive Director Moving the Goalposts. It's a pleasure being part of this conversation, being part of this roundtable. I got into sport because as a child, I never had a chance to participate in sport. And I had someone I was admiring, and that was my uncle, who was in charge of sports within the coast region where I was staying at that time. So I decided to volunteer when they had a tournament. And fortunately, I volunteered when they had a girls' tournament. And for me, I was able to see the challenges that women and girls faced as they really worked hard to participate in the tournament. There was no woman apart from myself who they were, looking up to, especially like no actual athlete role model for them, and taking care of the team. There was a lot of challenges around their, identification, how they're training. There was a challenge around how they are facilitated to get to the sporting venues. So that in itself made me get interested into, looking for opportunities where, women and girls were being engaged in sport. And that's how I landed at Moving the Goalposts as a community engagement or a community liaison officer.
And actually, before I turn it over to Janet, can you tell us a little bit more about Moving the Goalposts so that folks can have a sense of the organization as well?
Yeah, thank you. Moving the Goalposts is a sports for development organization, and it's a women's rights organization that uses sport as an enabler or as a platform where girls and young women can come together, access safe spaces, discuss sexual reproductive health and rights, the changes that happen in their bodies. Girls have freedom, to be themselves, to network, make friends, and play sport. So Moving the Goalposts is in 4 coastal counties in Kenya, and we currently work with about 9,000 girls. We run 3 leagues. We run a league for girls who are below 10 years, another league for girls who are below 13 years, and a league for girls who are between 14 and 25. To date, we have worked with over 50,000 girls and young women who've been part of our program. And this year, we are we have recruited around 8,000 girls who are going to take part in our annual league or tournaments that that are commonly dubbed moving the goalposts, where they are sport activities laced with sexual reproductive health and rights programming.
Wow, thank you so much. And there's a lot more to unpack there as we continue with our conversation. So thank you for that, Dorcas. Next is Janet Ott, who is with Bicycles for Development and Cycling Against Poverty in Uganda. Janet, thank you for joining us. And if you can also tell us a bit more about your own journey and your organization. Thanks.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm from Tororo, Uganda, and I've been doing a research more recently in the last 5 years on bicycles for development. And we've interviewed a couple of organizations here in Uganda, mostly in Eastern and Northern Uganda. But before that, my involvement with sports, women and girls started back about 15 years ago when I worked with a women's rights organization in Tororo. And we had a project that I managed. It was a project that was using karate and taekwondo to improve girls' confidence and keep them in school longer. So that is my background. And then later, that's how I met Dr. Lindsay Hayhurst from University of York University in Canada. And we've been working with her in the last 5 years on the Bicycles for Development project. So as you can see, I do more of the non-traditional sports. That's where my interest is. And the current project, we are looking at impact of bicycles on gender-based violence prevention, social entrepreneurship, and environmental sustainability. The study is being carried out in Uganda, in Canada, and in Nicaragua. I specifically lead the study in Uganda. Another thing is the study has done some work with with minority groups like sexual minorities in Canada, but in Uganda, we've not had any experience with them. And so I am not really very well informed in that area, but the other team that are in Canada are a bit more informed in that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thanks for bringing up the work with sexual minorities as well. That's something that I hope we can talk about as the conversation proceeds, to think about what some of the barriers are there. But for now, I'm going to introduce Astu Ndiaye, who is with the Astu Ndiaye Foundation in Senegal. Astu, thank you so much for joining us. And as with the other panelists, if you can also share about your own trajectory and tell us about the foundation.
Yes, I was still muted. Absolutely. Hi, everyone. Astu Ndiaye, African born in Senegal. I am an expat that came back to Africa. I was born and raised in Senegal until I finished high school. And I competed locally. The level then of basketball, I'm in basketball, was at a good level because there was a good competition across Africa. I migrated to the US to play college basketball university because, one, I knew to reach certain goals that I had in terms of education and in terms of basketball, I had to go out of Senegal. And what motivated me to create the Astu Ndiaye Foundation. I've done a lot of activities with girls over the years, but formally last year, we put the foundation together to be able to get the needed support from people that are willing to help advance equality for women. I'm saying that because I was born and raised and educated in Africa, and I reached heights in basketball across several international competition at the World Cups, in the Olympics, in the Women National Basketball Association, the WNBA. And all of that, I was Africa made. But over the 25 years of existence of the WNBA, which was celebrated last year, I'm the only Senegalese that has played there that long and won a championship. That, for me, was not okay. That is the reason why I created this foundation, to be able, one, to push more of our niece, nephew, kids to participate in sports early. I started very late. I modeled my game and what I was doing towards men role model that I saw in front of me that was doing what I wanted to do most of the time. I saw a few role models, but there was not that much mentoring on the female side. That also motivated the creation of the foundation. But the fact that we need to have more girls in places that are in places where decision-making happens, to me is key. And sports have played a huge part in me getting to the height I got to after playing basketball and being able to keep pushing the agenda forward for girls to have more opportunities.
Thank you, us too. And thank you to all our panelists. It seems that Batuli was not able to join us, so apologies about that. But I really appreciate the stuff that you've all said, and a thread, especially between Dorcas and us too, is about the absence of role models and kind of something for girls to aspire to besides whatever the path that men have been taken. But you know, one of the things that this panel wanted to talk about was also the kind of barriers that might be confronting associated with sexual identity and gender identity, right? And so Janet mentioned that at least in Uganda, you haven't seen any kind of queer or trans athletes around bicycling. And I would like to kind of think a little bit together about what you think, to the extent, so let's say starting with Dorcas and us two, to what extent are you also working with queer athletes, either lesbian athletes or trans athletes in your organizations? And then to follow up with Janet, I'm curious to know what you think is happening there that in Uganda you guys haven't had any experiences with gender and sexual minorities. So I'll start with you, Dorcas.
Thank you, Anima. At Moving the Goalpost, we run a very inclusive program where everyone that identifies as a girl or as a woman is welcome to participate in the program. We provide an environment that where everyone who comes to participate in Moving the Goalpost programs feels safe. We have a very strong safeguarding policy that takes care of bullying, takes care of discrimination, both at the community level and within the organization. And we also have a very strong HR policy in terms of like who we work with, and everyone has an equal opportunity to work at Moving the Goalpost. Therefore, I would say that all sexual girls who identify or sexual minorities in our program are part of the program, and we rarely really isolate them from other participants. So the program is very inclusive. What we have, the challenges we've actually faced has been that, when they participate in activities that are outside Moving the Goalpost, there's a lot of challenges around, bullying when they get on the pitch. They are also, we don't have very clear, rules from the mother federations to protect some of them. Like you find that people would ask, can we check, if you are a boy or a girl, before when they are at the touch line, and that already in itself has a lot of really destroys the individual even before they participate in the game. And therefore, our responsibility as moving the goalpost has been to ensure that we lobby and advocate that there's no form of discrimination when girls are going to participate in the activities. And we've trained our leaders to be able to be vigilant in such situations. One of the things that we really strongly also follow through is to ensure that during the matches, like where we are playing competitive matches, we ensure that we have security to enable that, to enable everyone who participates or any participant from our program to feel safe. Because sometimes our girls or our participants are being targeted when they're participating in these sporting activities. So our program has tried to really be inclusive, although we still face certain challenges that are coming outside the organization that we do not have overly control over, but we feel that there are things that we have a responsibility to advocate or to make sure that they do not harm our participants when they are actually taking part in our activities.
Thank you, Dorcas. That's really wonderful to hear. Astu, can you also comment on how your organization, if at all, engages with gender and sexual minorities for women in sports?
Right, thank you. Thank you for the question. Anima and the panel, I think in Senegal, we have a very conservative society. And I'm not even talking about gender differences. I'm talking already about women being able to participate fully and do what they want to do in sports. Because I clearly remember as we growing up, and I still see it, as a young lady, if you want to go lift weights or look a certain way to be able to compete and perform, you're already being labeled your boy. And it's a stigma that's being assigned. So we have our different realities, and as an organization, we're still young, as I mentioned, but the idea and our motto is to uplift people. So I'm working with 7th graders right now in a program going into 9th grade, but our first fight right now that we're focusing on is equality for already women to be accepted to do what they want to do in the sports circle and have the same opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Astu. And certainly I can imagine navigating the challenges of the society bring up some barriers. And we know that, Senegal, Kenya, Uganda, there are particular kind of legal issues that are being put into play, as well as cultural issues as well. So Janet, it's so wonderful that you're doing, as you called it, a non-traditional sport, working with bicyclists. And so I'm curious to know what kind of barriers on your end you think folks are facing, and if at all there's an engagement with, well, you mentioned that like in Canada, some of the research is engaging with gender and sexual minorities, but that's not the case in Uganda. I'm just curious how you're kind of making sense of that absence, given the broader context in which you're operating.
Well, maybe the way I've looked at it is that there's probably a bigger need there than here. And maybe another thing is I'm working in the rural areas of Uganda, especially in North and Eastern Uganda. When you look at it generally, these areas, they are rural, and in fact, probably the dominant number of rural people in the country are from that side. So like Astu said, it's very, very difficult for you to pronounce yourself maybe a sexual minority. Apart from in the town centers, I know there are some sexual minorities, but it's also a very closed group. So it would take an organization that is maybe doing the work and really targets those people who are sexual minorities. But when you come to cycling, I've not seen, but it's possible that some of these challenges are bigger if there is a research like in the town areas, in the city areas, you get such challenges, and there is certainly work to be done around that area. Yeah. In the rural areas, it's much, much harder. And also the problems with non-traditional sports is that sometimes they are not really much recognized by the government, but there are also challenges that they face. For example, you don't easily find bicycling lanes in the country. The roads are poor, and so people struggle. Accidents are prone to happen in the more rural areas because the roads are so poor. It is hard, and the bicycles keep breaking down. Those are some of the challenges that you face. But also, these people are not just looking at sports from a point of fun, but more in terms of livelihoods. And because they are looking at in terms of livelihood and the massive poverty that is facing them, one of the biggest challenges in itself is the access to bicycles and access to spare parts. That is the biggest challenge that they are facing. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Janet. And one of the things that Dorcas said, so personally in my own work, I try to avoid the language of gender and sexual minorities because it kind of reproduces this idea of a gender and sexual minority. And I think one of the things that Dorcas really kind of uplifted for us is what it means to kind of create an inclusive space, even recognizing the kind of structural and cultural barriers. So like the kind of experiences of bullying and makeshift sex testing, are you a boy or a girl, which us two also kind of brought up. And so even as we think about women's access to sports in these very patriarchal settings, recognizing that there are limitations when people are identified as lesbians or trans or whatever the case may be, I really am encouraged by this intentionality with which folks are kind of thinking about doing this in a very broad and expansive way. Actually, before I move to the next question, but we've been talking a lot about barriers, but that's not the only thing that women and girls and queer folk experience in sports. So I also wanted to ask about, about fun and opportunities for building community. So specifically, I'm thinking like, given the challenges that women and girls face in sports, in your experiences, how have they also been able to find opportunities for fun and community building? What kind of strategies have your orgs engaged, or different approaches that you might be able to share with us? And Dorcas, I'll let you go first on that.
Thank you, Anima. I think one of the things that has kept us to really ensure that girls benefit, or participants of our program benefit from our program, has been that the program has been designed to be a young women's program, and the design of its delivery, the design of the messaging is very youth-friendly or young people-friendly, because young people form the biggest percentage of our, audience. They form the biggest percentage of the impact we want to create, because we want to create a long-lasting impact. And therefore, our curriculums are play-based. They're delivered, all the curriculums that we deliver for messaging, the reproductive health messaging, the leadership messaging. We have a leadership curriculum. We have a coaching curriculum. All of them are play-based. And all our curriculum are delivered by the young people themselves. So our model is that let the young people be able to see the role models or people they closely identify with, people they live in the same villages with, and they can see them grow and thrive within the sport. And that has in itself created a lot of impact, because the young people themselves can see the opportunities for them also to grow. Because if if a coach has been trained from when she started the program, when she joined the program at 13 years, and then she's able to grow through her coaching career, like our current coach, and become a professional coach, become a FIFA instructor, then the other girls are able to see that, like if you see the person, the person you saw growing up is going up the levels of coaching, then they know that this thing is not for other people, it is for us. And therefore, that in itself has been a big impact for our program. I think the other thing is to also go grassroots, because one of the things that we have done is that our program, we directly work with the individuals, and we're able to capture a lot of, we're able to have direct contact with the persons every week, I would say the contact we have with an individual in a week is like 2 times. And therefore, chances of us being able to monitor other barriers, such as lack of access to education, dropping out of school, abuse or early marriages, is very easy for us, because we are able to meet this individual on a day-to-day basis, not on a day-to-day basis, like twice a week, sorry. And therefore, this gives us an opportunity to be able to track and support the individual, and also to influence the communities. One of the biggest successes of moving the goalposts has been the community engagement program. We train parents to understand sexual reproductive health and rights. We train parents to understand why women should take up leadership roles. And therefore, one of the things that we do, we have parents who advocate on our behalf. We have parents who support our program as we deliver it. Access to community spaces like fields. We have a program that we run within the community that is called the Young Men as Equal Partners program, where we work. We have a curriculum, also a play-based curriculum that we target boys and men with, to ensure that they understand the barriers or the challenges that are there between men and women, and why there's a lot of gap, in terms of access to opportunities. And that's why a lot of the girls the programs that we run for girls, they can access the sporting fields equally. Previously, the girls were unable to access these spaces of play. And therefore, I think a community engagement has formed a biggest part of our strategy and a biggest part of our success as moving the goalposts. Thank you.
Thank you. I find myself very inspired by the idea of kind of being able to track that progress and girls kind of giving back in that particular way. So Janet, to ask you the same question, given these challenges, what are some of the opportunities for fun and community building? One of the things you mentioned was that even access to the bicycles and spare parts is a big problem, and that's quite a challenge. And so just how are folks navigating that and finding opportunities for fun?
Okay, thank you, Anima. One of the things that has really helped is the funders who have been able to support the women. I would really want to credit organizations like World Bicycle Relief. I've seen organizations like Wheels for Life in Australia. There's Bike Not Bombs. And they've come and given, some organizations have given physical bicycles to the country, to people in the country, and some have given financial donations to some of these groups. And this has been very helpful. Now, why the financial and the bicycles is important is because the taxes on bicycles, especially used bicycles coming to Uganda, is very, very high. However, when organizations realize this, some of them have given financial aid so that bicycles are bought locally. And a new bicycle, maybe from India or China, can go at about $120 US. On the other hand, Some that have sent physical bicycles can send those bicycles, and then you agree with them, sell part of the bicycles to meet the costs of taxation, and the rest of the bicycles are donated to the women and girls that need them. One of the things I would say is that these bicycle organizations, some of the things that they've done so well is really being in groups. And it has worked so well that the women are able to come in groups and save money. A woman might get a donation initially, but even as she saves more money, she's able to buy a second bicycle for herself, because these bicycles are so important for their livelihoods. And another thing we also have, there's another organization that gave bicycles as asset loans. So they give you a loan of a bicycle in form of a bicycle, and then you pay over time. And that also helped. And they were using still, women would go in groups, and then they are able to go and access these asset loans. So these are some of the ways that they are able to get the funding to get these bicycles. On the other hand, there are those women who may not be part of any group, but they keep saving. And the difference I saw is that most of these people actually save, but they can only save enough to buy a used bicycle within Uganda, which could be like maybe $30 US. But in most times, those bikes are really broken down. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. So you've kind of preempted a question I have about resources. So thank you for that. I hope we'll be able to talk more about that as well. But as to you, if you can also talk more about opportunities for community building that the women and girls you're engaging with have, that would be great.
I'll put it a little bit in context, Anima, in the sense that we work in environments where there's not a whole lot of resources in terms of, because to me, basketball is a luxury sport in a way, because you need a court, a good court, you need basketballs that are well, not overused, you need shoes. There's so many things. And honestly, with passion, we find enjoyment in getting all those little things. I'll explain myself. As we grew up, we were functioning on one pair of shoes the whole year if we had a luck to run into one. And I'm talking for me and my peers, and we would just go play miles away, try to just get the basic of these games. So one, being able to have those experiences together, growing up as young ladies together in the school system, competing, winning, losing together, having activities, getting married, some of us, others going to different levels of competing or being professionals, but also pulling each other up from wherever other people are, in the sense that in my case, when I went to the US under full scholarship, I managed to bring in a few other young ladies that were in school and doing what they're supposed to do in the classroom and on the basketball court. That itself is a community building, because 20 years later, I'm still in touch with these moms, these CEOs, these people that are all over the world doing their thing, and some back here, like myself, working with these young ladies, where we already starting to instill these bringing them together as young women, not competing against each other, but searching for opportunities together, reaching for excellence, which they don't always have in their environments, and providing a space where they are secure and feel cared for more. I'm not saying that they not care for our home, they are, but giving more love and care to be able to do what they want to do as a unit. And we're doing this in different areas of Senegal. So bringing those kids together to have activities, to learn about menstruation, anticipate when they don't know what it means yet, to be able to go talk to eventually like women that are in the law to know what their rights are, to be able to understand more about politics, all these different things that we are going to be doing with some of these young ladies. Like I said earlier, we work with 7th graders to 9th in this one program, for instance, that we have. And there's a whole life skills program that is planned to work with them throughout the years, so that at some point when they get to, as we also monitor and evaluate our program, as they get from point 0 to their 3rd year, we know we have brought on, let's say, 50 more leaders in the Senegalese ecosystem, African and world eventually. So that itself, to me, at the basic level, is building a community across the continent.
It's really exciting. Thank you, Astu. It's really exciting to hear the kind of grassroots levels at which you're all doing this work, which is work that requires a fair bit of support. And I think, Janet, you started kind of touching on this a little bit, but I wanted to kind of go a bit further to think about the resources that are necessary to do this work. You're all working at slightly different scales. And so what are some of those resources that you need? Like, we can obviously think about funding. Where does that come from? How are you able to secure it? And perhaps this is an opportunity to share with the audience listening if there are ways that we can actually be helpful for you to keep on doing that work. So actually, whoever would like to begin with this question, please go ahead. Go ahead, Dorcas. It looks like you wanted to start.
I think I have a problem with my internet. I lost you a bit, Anima.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Now I can, but
Okay.
Yeah. I had the question. I had the bigger part of the question, so I'll try to answer, and just let me know if I'm not answering it right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So regarding resources, I would say resources are the biggest barriers, especially for women and girls, in terms of access to, places where they can play sport, and where they can access very quality, equipments, quality, support systems for them to thrive as they participate in sport. The other challenge is in terms of infrastructure, and this I'm talking about even like traveling to access some of these spaces. We work in rural communities, and you find that girls have to travel, or beneficiaries have to travel long distances to be able to access our sporting grounds. And the whole idea is that, schools should be in a position to provide spaces where young people could be in a position to participate or to enjoy sport. However, there's a challenge. Some of the schools do not have the sporting spaces, or even like travel becomes very, very difficult. Financial resource is one of the biggest factors. In very many ways, because you need to train people who are going to train the young people to be able to become athletes or to be able to perform well in sport. And you find that some of these trainings are, inaccessible based on how they are costed, based on how, they are provided. And sometimes federations ask you to pay, to make some contribution, pay for your own accommodation. And it becomes very inaccessible, especially to women and girls whose families may not even be prioritizing their participation in sport. And that becomes the biggest barrier even for us as an organization, because how many people can you be in a position to support access professional training? And lastly, just to run some of our programs, especially the sporting aspect of the program is really expensive. I think at Moving the Goalposts, the sporting aspect of the program is the most expensive, running leagues, running tournaments, ensuring that girls have access to quality, equipment and kits, that in itself is one of the biggest barriers. And that, some of these items are not locally made. So we have to rely on secondhand clothes, or if you're trying to access them, firsthand or from like the retailers or from the shops, it's really expensive and very inaccessible to our young people. Thank you.
Thank you, Dorcas. So actually part of the question was also, and I'll give you some time to think about this while the others respond. If there are ways that folks here in the audience might also be able to support directly, just so that we can also be thinking broadly about what it means to make sports accessible. So if you want to jump on that now, I'll open up to you. Otherwise, I'll pass it on to Janet to respond.
Yeah,
you can
pass.
Okay, so Janet, over to you now.
Thank you. As I had already said that one of the biggest problems is really the social needs. I'll give an example. One of the organizations that we interviewed has about, it has over 600 women registered in this group as of now. And a number of them are HIV positive and having very major needs, socioeconomic needs. And they use these bicycles to go and do farming, to go for medication, to go for all that. So when they sit in these groups, the bicycles, not more than a half of them have received the bicycles. And so that is a big challenge that they have. And the bicycles also break down. Now, some of the things that people can do, one is the funders, especially the bicycle organizations, should not run away from Uganda because of the high taxes, because the needs are great here. And these organizations that are working with bicycles are doing a great work and deserve the funding. They need that kind of support. The second thing is also, if some people are able to provide monetary support, that is also excellent. You may not be able to give a physical bicycle because of the taxation policies here, but if you can give financial support to give towards bicycles, that would be great. And then another thing is on the side of the government, it would be nice to support with good roads in these places such that there will be less bike breakdown. So our government also has a role to play. And then in places like Kampala, it would be good to also have, bicycling lanes. It would be good to have those bicycle lanes to encourage people to ride the bicycles. So generally, policies are needed to have good policies in place that can support this kind of sports. But even generally in Uganda, we need good policies for sports, not only for bicycling, but also for other kind of sports. And then also the organizations, it's good to raise more awareness because people actually don't know how a lot of these kind of sports are actually impacting on lives. Lives have been saved because of riding these bicycles. So the organizations, researchers, even on a forum like this, raise awareness so that the world can know what exactly is happening and how they can be able to help. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Janet. And I'll call your attention to the chat. There's someone who says they would be happy to volunteer with your project. So I'm glad we're able to have this part of the conversation. As to, so for on your end, what are the resources and how are you all kind of being able to acquire those resources?
Yeah, the eternal question of resources. Yes, personally, I was doing this when I played as a professional athlete. I was funding a lot of the activities I was doing with the girls, but as a mother of three, it became unsustainable. So I had to resort to different ways. So honestly, and I'm going to quote Masai Ujiri in the sense that he said, it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be seen by everybody for you to be leader into what you're doing. So don't underestimate the power of having friends and family words or themselves help financially. We also try to do the GoFundMe that have brought us in a little bit of resource, and also be able to eventually fundraise, because we're fundraising for the girls, but we're going to fundraise with them at the same time in the future, because there's no better advocate than themselves in my mind. So in our programs, it's a bit progressive, like, a build-up. Instead of progressive, like we have a program that we call Keep Her Moving. That's a little bit of not a very expensive program. That's just to encourage participation early, for girls to be able to play, stay healthy, but also to invite in the parents. We invite the parents and we sit with them. If we have that support, to me, it's a quarter of the battle, because that's not always the case. And from there, we do the women empowerment camps. Those are camps that are run over 3-4 days, where we have time to interact and spend time with mentoring, talk about health, talk about equality, talk about acceptance, talk about everything leadership that the girls can get need at this age that we choose between 11 sometime to 16, 17. And then we go to the Educate to Empower, which is a larger, more finance requirement program, where that one we plan to do some fundraising. I have a great team that we are young. Again, we are a young organization. We are doing some fundraising plans, but we are starting our first year, for instance, right now. And I need to shout out to the Noah's Ark Foundation that gave us some support this year to be able to run the girls program. It's just a beginning, so we can use more to be able to give girls the opportunity to play basketball and have the support they need academically, and be able to be around role model and people that will make them believe more that they can do anything they want to do around the world. That's 3 of our programs. We have a bigger program, so it's by tier, a bigger program that goes into the education system that we're working on. We're at the planning stage, but the first 3 we have managed over the past few years to put in place, and going through these friends, family, GoFundMe, online, Anima, can you give $100? I mean, here and there, we just, and bugging Gerard, we just, it's for the girls ultimately. So we do what we can to, but on a very more serious note, sustainability is key in what we're trying to do, to be able to make sure that what we start, we finish, and we continue to do. So repeat, for sure.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I heard you. So this is such an inspiring conversation. It's so wonderful to be able to hear from folks on the ground doing work in such different sports, right? Football and basketball and cycling, and really kind of thinking both about the utility of these sports and the opportunities for community building. I have one more question for you all, but I really want to begin asking folks in the audience. If you have a question, you can either, it would be preferable to put it in the Q&As. That way we can see it. You're welcome to put your questions in English or French. I think we have folks who will be able to do some translating for those. I don't know if there are other languages that we can translate, but don't hesitate to ask. So my final question for the panelists is about what you imagine for the future. So when you imagine the future of women, of sports for women and girls in your respective countries, regardless of their gender expression, regardless of their sexualities, what are some things that you hope for? What are some things that you see? And how do you think we can get there? So I will start with you, Dorcas, on that question.
Thanks, Anima. For me, if I imagine the future of sport, especially football, in Kenya, I think one of the things that I want to see is that there is so much investment within the country, and Kenya is known for, a country that is good in sport, and therefore we would like to see a future where the government plans for access to sport. We would like to see that the government invest, or our county governments invest in infrastructure for sporting activities, because organizations like us can be able to support with the social part of developing the sport, but we would like to have bigger investments done by the governments. And therefore, one of the things that we are calling for, like, for example, as moving the goalposts, we would like to see equitable budgeting, especially for sports at all levels, where a girl born today knows that she has a chance, or she has an opportunity to participate in sport and thrive, and that there are, support systems, and there are also systems that are able to protect them from abuse and from harm, because as we know also, the sporting world is also known to be a ground for harm and abuse. And we would, personally, the future I would like to see is sporting opportunities, or sporting platforms, sporting spaces that are free from harm and abuse. And that, for me, just provides the whole holistic reason of why sport was started, or sport existed, because it existed for fun. It existed for, enjoyment. It existed for, psychosocial support, for, high performance, for you to motivate yourself. And therefore, if the environment that sport is going to be provided is going to be free from harm, I think, for me, the world will be so much good. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Janet.
Thank you. When you look at the role that bicycles play in the lives of the people, especially in the rural areas, it is very important to raise this awareness. There's great impact that's happening, but not so many people know about this impact. And so from a researcher's perspective, I think there is need to raise great awareness about what this is doing. And the people that are at the grassroots there working, they do not have the capacity to raise this kind of awareness. They're just doing what they have to do every day. But we who have the skills and understanding, we need to give more support in fundraising, in raising awareness, in lobbying and advocating for different policies that will be helpful to them. And I think if we can do that with all the technical skills that we have, we'll be making a difference in the lives of very many people in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, that's such a good point about who has the capacity to do what and what it means to share that labor. As to when you imagine the future of sports for women and girls, what does that look like for you?
I just sent in the our group chat, an image, a video of the AFCON, the African Cup of Nations in Senegal in 2019. That was women's sports. It was a stadium of 15,000 that was filled to capacity. And the outside of the stadium, the final, Senegal, Nigeria, there was more people outside than inside the stadium. So you're talking about women's sports in Africa, over 30,000 people, plus the people watching on TV. What I would like to see is, and it starts at the grassroots. I'm not fooled. Like I said earlier, I'm the only Senegalese that was African born and that won in the WNBA, and that needs to change tremendously. What I want to see is just more representation across the sports world, not just on the field, but outside the field in the communication, the journalists, the referees, the coaches, just more women being seen across the sports landscape. But also public-private partnership. I mentioned how we try to raise funds, but Anima and the panel, this is hard. It's really hard. And it takes up a lot of time that could be saved if, one, government can be more involved at early stages in terms of infrastructure and in schools, but also like the RSO, what they call it in English, the company's social responsibility, organizations that are working in different countries to participate in the health and well-being of the population. See more public-private partnership to be able to fund organizations like ours, all women on this panel, and much more that are out there. And this to me will help, because what I'm doing right now, I'm not trying to recreate the wheel with this foundation. We're trying to see where people are doing certain things at a certain level, and we try to work with them to make it excellent more, so that when these kids grow to get to places, for instance, like a seed project, and I'll send the link in there, be able to excel in 2 years and go on to become who they want to be. So seeing, for instance, more seed projects across Africa where boys and girls equally are being cared for in a sporting space, where it's a model that's being used in the West for so long. We see so many schools, no matter how small the town is, have their gym, have their coaches, have everything they want for the little ones to be able to excel. See more infrastructure across Africa where kids, center of excellence where kids can perform and study at the same time would be, to me, one way to go.
Yes, Astute brings us back to the question of equality. So I want to say now, thank you very much to the panelists. We're going to open it up to question and answer, but I will not be moderating that. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Marie Eng, who will be moderating the Q&A and also telling us a little bit more about the working group. And so, Marie, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm going to beg off. Thank you all so much. This was such an enriching conversation. Cheers.
Thank you so much, Anima, and hi, everyone. Thank you so much to the panel, to us, to Janet and Dorcas for this really interesting conversation, one that I hope that we can continue to have. I think it was especially interesting for me to see at the end just the breadth of sort of work that you're doing, and the kinds of the breadth in the work that we are talking about, right, when it comes to women, girls, and sexual minorities. So we're talking both about the meaning of sport and physical activity in daily lives for health and well-being, but also us too was talking about the importance of infrastructures and centers for excellence. I really, really enjoy sort of the expansiveness of this conversation. So I'm not going to continue to use the space right now, but I want to open it up to the other attendees and see if we have some questions. If you have questions for particular people in the panel, or a question that you would like all of them to respond to, you're welcome to put that in the Q&A, which also allows you to ask anonymous questions, I think, but also in the chat. I know there was already one question in the chat for Dorcas from Wycliffe. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that question, Wycliffe. I think maybe Papa can help us with giving you speaking rights.
Do you want me to respond, Mary?
Yeah, let me see that. I see here Wycliffe has posted a question for Janet also, but let's start with a question for you. So in the chat, Wycliffe has asked, how have you collaborated with country governments along the coast of Kenya? And what about the working relationship with schools, and I assume along the coast of Kenya? That's a question for you, Dorcas.
Yes, thank you, Wycliffe, for being part of this session. We partner with county governments because we really would like to bring to speed the development of sport. And therefore, one of our main goals is to partner with them in different areas around advocacy on issues on the barriers that affect girls and young women. So we want to see better policies around sexual reproductive health and rights, because they are a barrier to girls participating in sport. Access to healthcare services and therefore health programming therefore directly works with the county governments to see how best girls can access sexual reproductive health information and services in order so that they can participate better in sporting activities. And finally, with the sports department, just to ensure that the county government has better policies in place around women and girls' access to sport. And yes, we work with schools. Most of our activities, all the 51 communities where our girls play football in are, I think 70% or 80, around 80% are school-owned. And therefore, they form a big part of our partnership. They form a big part of our program. So definitely, yes, we run leagues and tournaments for primary and secondary schools, and therefore the schools are therefore participating in the tournaments that we organize. So we have a very close working relationship with them.
Thank you for that, Dorcas. I've been informed that Wycliffe should be able to speak now. Do you want to articulate your question to Janet, Wycliffe?
Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for this wonderful panel. Great insights, diverse perspectives. I happen to come from Western Kenya, so I've traversed the border. I've had experiences with bicycles and motorbikes, both in Western Kenya, along the border, especially Maraba and Busia, and then in Uganda. And one of the things that really scare me is the risk involved, especially those who are doing it to generate income. My question to Janet is, what is the safety level in terms of what you have observed in your research? What is the level of training for those people who happen to be involved in the program of biking? Because from what I see from Kenya, on the Kenyan side, there is no preparation, there is no training. And even in my own family, in the last 2-3 months, I've had 2 of my own nephews get involved in accidents involving bicycles, involving motorbikes. What safety precautions do you guys train in order to equip the riders and the owners of the bicycles in Uganda, in Tororo?
Okay, thank you so much, Wycliffe. Now, specifically as a research organization, we are not doing physical work, training people to use bicycles and motorcycles. What we do, we already go to interview people who are involved with the work. Now, what we've noticed in Uganda, the accidents are actually more prone with people who ride motorcycles. And so those ones have to be able to get trained and get a permit from the government, because you need to have a riding permit to be able to ride. And if people are honest, they should be able to get this permit. But there are also so many people who are not trained. They just go and get a motorcycle and begin riding. It is different with bicycles that normally you don't need any permit to ride bicycles in this country. The best that you can do as an organization is to encourage people who ride motorcycles to go get trained and get their permits. And then even when you come to the bicycles, normally the accidents are not as bad as those ones that are caused by the motorcycles. if you get the percentages, you'll find those ones experience worse effects because of the motorcycle accidents. And that's why I would probably advocate more for the bicycles. And then secondly, you're talking of Malaba, for example, and Western Kenya, which is also a very, very busy place. But when you come to some of the rural places, they are not as busy like that with the cars, with the tuk-tuks, with the, motorcycles riding everywhere. So there's actually quite high degrees of safety using bicycles. But in addition, that's why there is a lot of lobbying going on to have better, to have cycling lanes in this country. Because if you have a cycling lane, at least the people with the vehicles will have their own place to pass, and then those who are bicycling will also have their lanes, and it would reduce accidents. That is definitely an issue of government policy. And at least one of the organizations we interviewed is really pursuing that in this country. Hope that helps. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. I see that in the chat we have a question from Patrick. Now, I think well, there are two questions, in fact, and I think I'd like to give each of the panelists an opportunity to respond to those questions. So the first one is just an acknowledgement and saying thank you for the work that you're doing. Now, the first question is, Patrick is wondering how you recruit girls to participate in sporting activities. And secondly, what hope do you hope to give the girls, considering the challenges associated with women's sport in your specific countries? I think I'm going to start with Astu and see if you can begin the feedback to Patrick's question.
Hey, thank you for that question, Patrick. Very relevant in the sense that for the girls, we try to make sure that these girls are in public schools where they have less opportunities to participate in certain sports that require funding. Also, we work with the school system to see which girls are coming out of the sixth grade have excelled, to make sure we keep giving them opportunity going forward, because the foundation, for instance, pays their registration to the centers they join, pay the tutoring that they receive weekly, and also pay the coaches that teach them basketball. So the selection is very much driven by socioeconomics, and also kids that are working to be excellent in any kind of situation. School is being the primary driven factor, like being in school.
Dorcas, would you please respond to the two questions posed by Patrick in the chat?
Yeah, thanks, Mari, and thanks, Patrick, for joining us. For us, because our main goal is social change, and we want our main objectives to use sport to create change within communities and to transform communities to better respect girls and young women. And therefore, our scale, as I've spoken earlier, is a bit wide. So our recruitment drives are annual. And our programming is also annual. So our manuals, our curriculums are annual. However, we also have a way of progressing girls who re-register or who now want to participate beyond the annual program, because we have girls who've been in our program for the past, let's say, 6 or 7 years as a return participants. So for us, recruitment is done by the girls themselves. They take a lead role to recruit their friends. And because, as I said, they are within the same communities. So definitely what happens is that with the lead of our staff members, the girls will just we have to make sure that they fill the recruitment forms. because we uphold very high standards of safeguarding, we have to get parents' consent for girls to be part of our program. And as we get parents' consent, then we are in a better place to start engaging the girls in our program. And mostly you find that around 60% of the girls who participate in our program in a year would re-register again or would repeat participation. And therefore, the hope we give our girls is that they can see others thrive and grow. They can see others, be able to deal and tackle challenges that they face. We are able to support in some way to ensure that girls continue with education by paying part of their school fees. We are able to ensure that girls can get to higher level of sporting. For example, currently we have one of the girls who started playing sport in our program now playing professional football. And therefore that in itself, gives us an opportunity for girls to be able to see, that there's hope in participating in sport and especially playing football.
Okay.
Thank you, Dorcas. Janet, over to you. Sorry.
Okay, thank you so much. The different organizations we've interviewed have different ways of recruiting, but I will talk about one example of an organization in northern Uganda that recruits women who are mostly infected by HIV, but some are also affected by HIV. For example, they are taking care of children, of orphaned children because of HIV. And there is a lot of stigma that surrounds HIV. But because of this stigma, these women have come together and they stand strong together with very clear objectives to save time, save money, save lives. And so they gather themselves in groups of 30 people. They gather themselves in groups of 30 women, and they save together on a weekly basis and advise each other. Because of this, they also stand strong, like they are able to stand and clearly say to the public, I am HIV positive, so there is no stigma about it. And because there are so many people, there are so many women, the community also respects them and does not stigmatize them like if you were to seclude one woman alone. And even when they go to hospital, because they already know, they have their T-shirt with their name. So when they go to hospital, the services are fast-tracked for them. So with such a group, so many people are happy to join it. When they are HIV positive, they can either come alone on their own to join the group, or their very community friends who know they are positive come and tell them, by the way, why don't you join our group because of what they're benefiting from. Now, there are over 400 women. And what happens is when they reach a group of 30, you start another group. And each of these groups is registered as a community-based organization at the sub-county level, which makes a difference because they are legally recognized in the community. Through these groups, women have become leaders, community leaders, so they are able to raise awareness of what they are doing, and they encourage more people to come and join the group. And the group is ever growing. When they get any donations of bicycles, they actually sit and start discussing who is the most needy in the group and give that one the bicycle. So it's an encouragement and motivation. The whole community knows them and willingly come and join the group. Thank you.
Thank you to Janet and the other participants. I know we have a question from Suleiman Diallo the floor is yours, and you are welcome to speak in French, and we will have someone translate. That's also for the other participants. Suleiman, over to you.
Voilà, merci beaucoup. Je suis vraiment très content de cette invitation qui m'a été faite. Et je suis vraiment désolé de ne pas m'exprimer en anglais, même si je comprends une partie de ce qui est dit. Dans tous les cas, nous sommes dans la thématique, laquelle thématique nous oriente vers le sport sur les minorités sexuelles. Bon, c'est extrêmement important. Je voudrais exprimer ici toute ma joie de participer à ce panel. Ben, nous sommes dans le sport, je suis sociologue du sport, et nous nous agissons à cela. Donc, nous sommes vraiment très contents. C'est pour féliciter les uns et les autres et de rappeler qu'il y a des minorités qui sont aujourd'hui ignorées. Je ne dis pas ignorées entre guillemets parce que c'est des minorités qui pratiquent le sport et ce secteur-là n'est pas très appréhendé. Vous savez, le corps est exigeant. À un moment donné, par rapport à l'âge, il réclame des activités.
Can I speak?
Je parle aussi aux vieux.
Monsieur Suleiman, est-ce que vous pouvez attendre que je traduise un peu ce que vous avez dit?
Comment?
Vous pouvez attendre, je vais traduire je vais résumer ce que vous venez de dire avant que vous ne continuiez. Sinon, je vais perdre le fil.
Ah, je résume.
Non, je vais résumer en anglais.
Oui, allez-y, go on.
Okay. Suleiman said that he's very happy for the invitation and being here, and he has the topic is very important. He's a sociologist of sport, and then he wants to thank everybody for the contribution, and that's a very quick summary. Suleiman, allez, on peut continuer alors.
Voilà, merci beaucoup. Je dois dire que par minorité, je dois me poser la question de savoir si est-ce que le concept de minorité est vraiment bien cerné. Parce que je vois qu'il y a des vieux qui pratiquent le sport. Je vois qu'il y a des gens qui sont dans des milieux culturels où la femme n'est pas autorisée du point de vue culturel à faire le sport. Je vois qu'il y a des handicapés. Ceux du sexe masculin ne font pas du sport pratiquement, ils s'auto-excluent et n'en parlons pour les dames, n'en parlons pas. Je vois aussi que pour atteindre le haut niveau, c'est extrêmement difficile pour certains. Extrêmement difficile pour certains, surtout les filles. Nous avons parfois en Afrique une tradition qui bloque. Alors, cette tradition qui bloque, eh bien, elle ne permet pas l'éclosion de talent. J'ai fait moi-même une étude sur les filles. Comment est-ce que les familles, c'est surtout au Sénégal, ces familles-là bloquent le développement du talent sportif chez certaines jeunes filles à cause de considérations purement culturelles. Je dis bien de considérations purement culturelles. Quand je dis considération purement culturelle, eh bien, ça signifie que c'est une intériorisation des normes culturelles qui font qu'on considère la fille comme quelqu'un qui doit se préparer pour aller vers le mariage et autres. Même si elle doit apprendre, cette conception-là commence à changer, même si elle doit apprendre, eh bien, elle doit aussi, dans cet apprentissage, prendre en considération ce qui l'attend demain culturellement parlant.
Okay.
Et le sport constitue une chose.
Je vais traduire et puis on va essayer d'aller à la question directement.
Oui, allez-y.
Okay. Suleiman is asking about the concept of minorities. Is it very well defined that there are many forms of minority? It can be cultural, it can be disability, it can be all sort of form of minorities. How do we define it? And then he branched out to go back to girls and women and how they are handicapped, especially in the context of Senegal, by culture, a culture that prevents them of progressing and evolving to reach their full potential as athletes.
Thank you so much. We are starting to run out of time, and there's another question in the chat that I'm gonna turn over to. But I think what Suleiman was mentioning was also the importance of thinking intersectionally, right? When we are working with women, girls, and sexual minorities, that while we may define those groups as minorities in the particular work that we are doing, that those identity labels or minority categories don't constitute everything that person is, right? So we also have women and girls that play sports and participates in sports with and without disabilities, and women and girls are also sexual minorities. But just in this particular conversation, our focus has been on women and girls, who are often considered minorities within the world of sports, and sexual minorities. I'm hoping maybe for future conversations we'll expand and maybe also trouble the concept of minority. I know our moderator earlier problematized using minority and what kind of work minority as a word does when we put it into action, and some of the challenges that we face when we use the language of sexual minorities on this continent, right? So the importance of also talking wider. But we have one more directed question that came up in the chat, and that is a question for Janet. So I hope you are willing to answer another question. So the question for you, Janet, is that taxation is a big obstacle. What kind of advocacy is being done regarding taxation, and how is the government responding to that?
Thank you so much, Marie. And Simon, is it? This problem of taxation is quite big, but when you start with advocacy, the very first thing is you need to know where is the problem coming from and try to raise that awareness to the right people. At the moment, not much has really been done by the organizations on ground to speak to the government about this problem, because taxation is a general problem in the country. But that's why I say that for us who have the knowledge to write and talk to the right people, I think that is a call to us to go ahead and write more and talk more and speak to the right people about this problem until there's a change, because I cannot tell you there is any change that the government has put in place at the moment. And secondly, they don't even understand that the bicycle has such a big impact. Apart from more recently in the COVID-19 lockdown, when actually every other form of transportation was called off, apart from bicycles were allowed to move. In that case, at least that was an opportunity that we should have used to tell the government. Now, on the other hand, also as a form of advocacy, is to speak to the funding organizations. Don't just give bicycles and run away. You come and see what is happening on ground, and don't be discouraged because of the taxation that is so heavy. Please come and let us work together, because despite the challenges, the offer that you give of bicycles is making a great impact on the lives of the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet, and thank you for picking up on what I think is something that very practically, as coming together here, and you guys sitting in the panel sitting together, it's also something that we can do to support the work. So, putting our heads together and writing and thinking and sharing experiences precisely around this advocacy work, right? So I'm hoping that is something that we'll be able to take forward. I can see that Jibril has their hand raised, so I'm wondering if you would like to ask a question, or if the comment that you pasted in the or placed in the chat earlier was sufficient. I will allow you to speak now. Yeah.
Yes, welcome. Yes, merci.
Hi, Jibril. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Yes. First of all, congratulations for your this well organized panel. And thank you also for your invitations. The studies we have conducted show that in Senegal, the greatest victories in sport at continental and world level have been achieved by women. Now, we are focusing on building the capacity of women to reach decision-making position. In this regard, we have many experiences. Some of them is that we have set up the consultative group of women leaders in sport at conferences for all French-speaking world. Also, we have participated with USAID in the Live Learn and Play project to answer to the question, how to empower girls from the outset at the very beginning to integrate the entire value chain for gender equality, health, and financial autonomy, and also non-violence conflict resolution in respect to the environment. Thank you for all, and we are together. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Jibril, and thank you for that question, kind of bringing us back to, you know, what more than mere sport or participation in physical activity is that we're doing here. And I think I want to turn this over to Dorcas, because I know that Moving the Goalpost has got a number of programs and are working with different kinds of topics and working to empower women and girls and their participants when it comes to equality, health, and autonomy. Do you want to say something about the work that you do, Dorcas?
Thanks, Mari. Yes, I would like to say something about what we do with girls and young women. So our whole design of the program is to look at the whole life cycle of a girl and a young woman or our beneficiary from when they turn 9. And we recognize the needs and the information they need to have that they may not have by virtue of where they're located, the challenges that are in their communities, the people that are supposed to give the information, if they have the right information to give to them. And therefore, our design of our sexual reproductive health and rights information is to mitigate the misinformation, the lack of information, where girls and young women can make informed choices about their bodies, the changes that happen to bodies, when they should marry, who they want to marry themselves, and therefore use that opportunity to also play back to the communities of their parents to understand why they should support this and why they should support their girls and young women, and making sure that some of the success stories that we are able to capture, or we are able to have within our program, that we are able to share them back with communities, and they can see how those girls and young women that parents are investing, that barriers have been reduced, and how this is impacting on the wider community or in the wider family. And we do that with recognition that as girls participate in sport, they may also have a chance, they may need to change what they want to do, like they may want to pursue other things in life. They may want to focus on other talents, or they may discover other talents in the process. And therefore, that's why our program becomes fluid, because we are working with young people, and it gives us an opportunity to go in, come back. So a bit of fluidity in terms of like how we run the program, and therefore focus on skills building, leadership building. For example, training them to start seeing the pathways around sport. For example, you can become a coach, you can become a referee, you can become the person delivering reproductive health and rights information. You're the first aider of the team. And therefore, this provides them as an opportunity to try and practice leadership skills, and in itself gives them an opportunity to be able to either pursue or even see how challenging it is to become a leader and make decisions to either move to another kind of leadership opportunity, and or some of them use that as a stepping stone to vie for positions within the school, to vie for positions within their clubs, some of them, if they're older, within the communities. And lastly, around financial independence and entrepreneurship, what we do there is to try and enable girls to be able to see how best they can start learning about entrepreneurship, how they can save, the funds they have learned to start saving early, and how they can be able to see opportunities around self-employment, because in our communities or in Kenya, we have a big problem of unemployment and underemployment, especially for girls and young women. And therefore looking at other, like alternative pathways for girls to be able to seek employment where they've gone to school and they haven't found employment, that they're not going to sit on their skills, sit on their talent. They're going to be able to pursue opportunities while they are participating in our program. So in short, I think that's how I can give in summary what we do with girls and young women.
Thank you, Dorcas, for giving us that brief overview. And I know, Janet, you've been talking a bit about kind of the financial autonomy and ability to make a livelihood that comes out of the work that you've been focusing on. Is there something else that you'd like to highlight around sort of, what is it, the value chain of equality, empowerment in relation to health, economics? Janet, you're muted.
Okay, thank you. When it comes to bicycles, maybe I may not really have much more to add. Yeah, but I just want to say that one of the things that the women have been able to do when they get these bicycles, they are able to do businesses, and many are just so happy to be able to provide for their families. They are able to and this helps them to gain even respect from their husbands because of this asset that they have. So this is so important for them. They're able to do business, they're able to go to the gardens and get their products from the gardens, and all this adds value to their lives. They're even able to ride and go to attend meetings, which has made them leaders. They've been able to go for funerals and stand by their colleagues who are in pain. So all these are small things that make a difference in the women's lives as they use these bicycles. I don't know whether you'll give me more time to answer a question that I see from Simon, or I should wait later for that.
Thank you, Janet. We are running out of time, and I see there's a question for Simon that I said I'm gonna take it and steal it, and we're gonna put it into another event. Maybe right. Simon also can organize the next conversation, right, and be one of the participants to that. But I just want to thank everyone who's come, and especially want to thank you, Janet and Dorcas, and us who unfortunately had to go a little earlier, and Anima again for taking time out of your busy days. I know you've both had a busy day and a busy week, so we really appreciate you coming here to talk to us. Thank you so much, and I look forward to continuing this conversation, because I'm also going to take this opportunity to do a little bit of advertising about the Gender, Sexuality and Sport Working Group. Both Dorcas and Janet are members of this group, and it is a sort of working group within the Sports Africa network, where we are a community of academics and practitioners, students, scholars. Some of us are both academics and practitioners. We have an interest in increasing the work and the knowledge about genders and sexualities in African sports, both on and beyond the continent. So we come together as a group. We meet about every 6 weeks on Zoom, And we are focusing on being a space that is very inclusive. So we work for radical inclusion and for gender diversity in African sports. But we're also really trying to cross the academic practitioner divide and to find ways of working together where everyone can get something out of it. And I think this event today also came out of that aspiration to make sure that we're not just having one conversation for the academics who are doing research and another conversation for practitioners, but really challenging ourselves to work together and to mutually support each other. So one of the things that we are doing is that we're currently hoping to create and sustain a digital archive of some women's sporting legends on the continent. That is an ongoing process. We are aiming to write and publish together both funding proposals, academic work, reports, and we have also been talking about doing a reading group where we can read both academic and fictional work related to genders and sexualities in African sport. So I just want to encourage those of you who are not already members, because I can see in the participant list that there's quite a few of our regular members that are here. Hi, and thank you for coming. But if you're not already a member and you'd like to know more, then please sign up on the Sports Africa social website. It's social.sportsafrica.com, or you are welcome to send me an email. I can tell you a little bit more about the group and make sure that you are added to the email list. We had a brief meeting last week, so our next meeting should be, I think, in the beginning of May. So I hope to see more of you there. Yeah, I think we have already gone a little bit over the time, but thank you again to the panelists, those who are still here and those who have left, and also to the technical team, Papa, Lailana, Bose, and Gerard, who's hiding behind the Sports Africa name here. Thank you so much for helping us put this together, and we look forward to doing more of these in the future. Thank you to all the attendees, and I hope we can continue this conversation. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening or a good day, depending on your time zone.